Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story. My brother burned down the house and the insurance company did not want to pay the money, so my dad burst in. The second story. Manager was a jerk and told me to stand still. I did it and chaos started. The third story. A cop suggested I learn the law, so I came back to tutor him. The first story is, insurance company tries to screw family, gets nailed. The year was 1987 to 88, and I was a college senior. My brother's 3 years younger than I am and was a sophomore in high school. My parents had just finished remodeling our home, especially the kitchen and bedrooms, and had taken a trip to Florida. My brother decided to have his girlfriend over for dinner and decided to cook her french fries. Now, the new stove was some sort of 80s ceramic cooktop. I cannot remember the brand name, but I do remember you could not tell if the stove was on or off, except for an orange light. These kind of stovetops only heat the pan. There's no gas or electric burner. You literally cannot tell if the stove is on other than putting your hand on it. It's a ridiculously stupid design and probably not made anymore. It was an induction. So my idiot brother pours oil in the pan to make the FFs, and either forgets to turn the stove off or doesn't see the orange light that's still on. He goes into the other room to get laid. There's great family debate about this to this day. Did you know that hot oil doesn't not evaporate? It just keeps getting hotter. Well, the oil eventually exploded all over the brand new cabinets and immediately sets the kitchen on fire. Bro has just enough time to grab the dog, girlfriend, and call fire department before running out of the house. Fire department is amazing and knocks fire down after only burning out the brand new kitchen and dining room. Significant structural and smoke damage, but house is still intact. Oh, this all happened while my folks are on a plane back from Florida. I won't get into what happened to bro, but suffice to say, he had to hide in the woods for a few days. Now this is where it gets good. My crazy A father has a giant filing system. All paper where he has the giant metal racks in the basement, where every effing thing ever purchased is in an accordion file on the metal shelving in some sort of ridiculous filing system that only he can use. Every effing receipt since 1963. The Vogons would be proud. So, once the dust settles, my father calls the insurance company to file a claim. As we all know, insurance companies tend to be large, greedy, bureaucratic SH shows with zero interest in helping people. Insurance company starts asking for receipts, all of them. Father goes into his filing system from hell and begins producing every single receipt the insurance company asks for. Now, understand that the house is unlivable at this point. The smoke damage was pretty severe, and they're stalling. Finally, they come back with an offer that is ridiculously low. Now, my father is not a calm person and hates insurance companies and lawyers more than anything. As a very successful businessman, he's had his share of lawsuits and takes particular joy in suing crooked lawyers and insurance companies. So, he goes nuts when they make this lowball offer and immediately files suit against them for violating the homeowner's policy. In the meantime, he has to find suitable living arrangements for family, deal with agents, get contractor estimates, etc. I asked my father why he didn't just take the money and begin rebuilding. He says, these efforts do this to people all the time and people have to take the money in order to rebuild, but I'm gonna fight them. So he begins painstakingly researching the policy with his broker. Fast forward a few months and I'm home for the summer and to work on rebuilding the house. The entire family is working on the house when there's a knock on the door. My brother answers. The guy says, "Are you X?" My brother says, "Yes. Consider yourself served." The look on my brother's face was priceless and we were hysterical. He didn't understand and my father says, "I'm suing you." My father sued my brother for negligence. The same insurance company provided us with the contents policy as well as homeowner's insurance. See where this is going? The insurance company would have had to represent my brother under the homeowner's policy. The insurance company called the next week, settled the case in full. The next year, insurance law in my state was permanently changed to prevent that from ever happening again. I just searched the local newspaper archives, and the fire took place on 4/22/87. This would have made me a junior in college, and my brother a senior in high school. So, I just spoke to my pop. Here are a few more details to the story. For those thinking the story's not true because a policy is a policy and it's all spelled out, the fact that he had every receipt is important, because after he produced all of them, the insurance company literally said, "We're not paying you the final $20K of the claim. Sue us." They knew it would cost him about that much to file suit, so he wasn't having any of that BS. If you think about it, insurance companies screwing policyholders like that would save them a ton of money, and most people would simply settle. Back in 1987, you absolutely could sue a family member for negligence under the same insurance company that had multiple policies on your home. The insurance law, rule, policy, whatever loophole he found was changed forever in my state after that suit. They didn't settle the next week. His lawyer got a call the next day. I did ask if he had a copy of the suit. There was a long pause as if he was mentally finding a triplicate form. I don't think so, he said. I would have him ask the law firm he used, but he ended up suing them 10 years later on a different matter. Haha, and yes, he won. The next story is, you want me to stand right here? Okay, I'll stand right here. When I was in high school, I had a part-time job at a McDonald's. Making my own money and having the freedom to buy what I wanted was a compelling motivator for me to do the best job possible at work so that I wouldn't risk losing it. Despite being a full-time high school student, I worked 35 hours a week as well and found myself enjoying it most of the time. I'm not going to pretend like everything was perfect. It was a McDonald's, but I had rapport with the majority of my coworkers and managers, and I was known for doing a good job. Most days I was assigned to work the rear window in the drive-thru, which was a station that had many responsibilities. As a result, being able to multitask was an absolute must. I would run stock from the storeroom to the front or to grill, do all the dishes, prep those little boxes Happy Meals come in addition to taking all the orders in both lanes of the drive-thru and cashing out people at the first window. It was a lot of work, but it kept time moving, and it was the station I preferred to be in. One day we got a new customer. He was very full of himself and thought that his methods were the best. Our customer satisfaction scores were suffering in front of house, and he figured it must be because of all the dumb teenagers, myself included, that didn't know how to do their jobs correctly. He noted that customers generally liked me, and I had positive feedback to my name, so he took me out of the back and put me on the front to do something about customer satisfaction. The problem was that nobody else was really trained or accustomed to do all the additional tasks that I did when I was in back. As a result, those extra tasks didn't get done unless I went back to do them. This was generally not an issue, since there were 2 to 3 people working the front and I could communicate with my coworkers that I needed to handle the dishes, run stock, etc., and nobody complained. However, in an effort to prove himself, the new manager decided that he knew best and that he would micromanage us. One particularly busy afternoon, we were completely out of a few different condiments up front, so I told my coworker I was going to go pull them to restock. They said okay and covered my counter. When I headed back, I was pulled aside by my manager and asked very loudly, "Where the F do you think you're going?" I explained where I was going and what I was doing, but he wasn't having it. He marched me back to my spot at the counter, yelled, "When I tell you to stay right effing here, I mean stay right effing here," in front of customers and left. I was a little shaken, and enough to want to get revenge. Anyone who's worked at McDonald's knows that there are many tasks which need performed up front. One does not stand still at the register and only take orders, even when there's a line. I did as I was instructed. I stood firmly rooted in my spot and did not move. When a customer asked for something and I was the only person available, I told them I would have someone grab it for them because I was not allowed to move. When meals needed bagged or put on trays to be sent out, I informed whoever asked that I would love to help them, but I was not allowed to move from my spot. The shake machine malfunctioned and I did not move to fix it. There was a spill in the lobby and I did not move to fix it. I did literally nothing that I couldn't do while standing in place. Obviously, this was extremely clumsy and counterintuitive. It made work harder for everyone else, but they had heard my manager's meltdown and didn't put it past me. Eventually, the manager came up to me, red-faced and screaming, asking why nothing was getting done and why the lobby was packed. Orders were moving out at a snail's pace, none of the dishes were done, etc. I calmly told him that he'd told me to stand right effing here, so I stayed right effing here. Customers who had heard him screaming put 2 and 2 together and figured the poor management was the reason for things going poorly and not poor employees. He was peeved. There was disciplinary action, and he never tried to micromanage us like that again. On a happy note, over the following months, he turned into less and less of a jerk and stopped trying to puff himself up. And the last story is, learn more about the law. When I was a teenager, my friends and I used to hang out at the local theater on weekends because we were still counting down to being old enough to drink in public. In fact, everyone who went to the 3 nearest high schools all hung out at the theater on weekends with their preferred groups. Though every era-appropriate subgenre of suburban 90s teen was represented on any given weekend night, the punk rock enthusiasts stood out from the rest. It's important to note that this distinction had nothing to do with our behavior. We were no more rambunctious than some other groups, but as far as appearance went, we looked like the extras from The Road Warrior enjoying a perpetual smoke break. For my part, in addition to a green Byhawk, I had an old military jacket that I had dyed black and covered in spikes, studs, and band patches, the most prominent of which was a giant back patch that had been cut from an old t-shirt. It depicted an emaciated skeletal humanoid with a mohawk vomiting blood. This period of my life is as close as I will likely come to understanding even a little bit what it feels like to be discriminated against based on my appearance. People in the Georgia suburbs generally reacted to my presence with suspicion, fear, and distrust wherever I went, and I reveled in it when it suited me. In a few years, I would learn that I could take off the jacket, along with the baggage that went with it. But as far as this story goes, we definitely aren't there yet. Anyway, it was on a night like any other that the cop that patrolled the theater approached our group, with definite purpose. D, one of my younger friends, had already started to get up. We knew the drill. Even then, I had mixed feelings about law enforcement officers. In my experience, some of them did heroic work that saved lives, some of them took bribes to look the other way, and some of them singled out any difference and punished it in any way they could, just like any bully would. D, sit down, I quietly but firmly commanded. If the cop saw this, he gave no indication. The cop said, "You boys need to leave." D started to get up again. D, sit down, I said again. D sat back down slowly, perhaps realizing that he was now at the edge of something, not in the middle. "You heard me, right? You need to leave." "Oh, why's that?" "Because you're loitering," the cop said, exasperated at being challenged. Then I did what was either the most or least punk rock thing I've ever done. I looked up at him and said, "Actually, according to Georgia Municipal Code Section 161136, loitering consists of acting in an evasive manner in the presence of law enforcement, refusing to identify ourselves, or manifestly endeavoring to conceal ourselves or an object." He looked at me like I just came down from outer space to swindle his mom out of her retirement fund. I continued, "Now, you're supposed to give us a reasonable opportunity to identify ourselves and explain or justify our presence and behavior. If it strains credibility to imagine a 17-year-old saying that to a cop, I understand completely. I should mention, though, that we had been getting sent home early almost every weekend for almost a year by the same cop, while all the other teens, from AC to Zach, were allowed to play out their curfews. At one point, the word went around my group of friends that the charge of loitering was specifically related to taking up commercial space without actively consuming anything, so we had adopted the habit of making sure we each had at least $1 on us at all times to demonstrate our status as potential paying customers. This theory unfortunately broke down in practice. One night, upon being confronted by the cop, we attempted to present our dollars, but instead of hissing and vanishing like a Marxist vampire, he laughed at us and told us we needed to learn more about the law. Thusly inspired to a new level of civil participation, I spent the rest of the night memorizing the relevant municipal ordinances pertaining to loitering for the next time the police confronted us, and I even practiced saying them out loud a few times. But I digress. The cop, having just been prompted to give us an opportunity to explain or justify our presence and behavior, simply gave me a long hard look and said, "Are you a lawyer? Because I love throwing lawyers in jail." I gave him a long hard look and said, "No, I'm not actually a lawyer, but this jacket fools everyone." He opened his mouth to say something, but instead just gulped a few times like a landed fish. The realization that he wasn't psychologically prepared to turn a routine troublemaker sweep into an actual incident crossed his face, and he went back inside the theater. He never bothered us again. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this.